Frost sheathed the copper roofs of Dromben the night the silver nomads rode in, though not a soul in the river city saw them arrive. The moons were thin sickles, the wind sharp with thawed salt from the western sea, and the streets below thrummed with lantern traders haggling over broken promises harvested from sailors' tongues. Yet above that mundane clatter, the nomads crossed the sky as silently as quills across fresh parchment, their mounts leaving no more trace than moonlight leaves on water. Cayley, a map-maker's apprentice, was the rare witness. He had climbed to the observatory tower to sketch the winter constellations, hoping the stars might lend him an escape route from his apprenticeship and the father who'd pawned his youth for liquor. While his ink froze against the drafting table and the brass sextant fogged with his breath, Cayley raised his eyes to Polaris and saw a procession shimmering far past the reach of wings. Dozens of riders, clad in argent mail, knelt low over lupine shapes woven of ice and ghost flame. The wolves vaulted from constellation to constellation, claws scattering blue sparks that dissolved before they could become falling stars. One rider pivoted in mid-leap and hurled a net of braided silver behind him. Cayley watched the net open and tighten around something invisible, something Cayley felt more than saw, like a shiver of music too faint to be heard. Then the cavalcade vanished into the shadowed west, and the sky resumed its usual choreography. But the vision had burned itself into Cayley's mind with the steadiness of an engraving. He did not return to the drafting table. Instead, he climbed onto the parapet, despite the wind, cupped his numbed hands around his mouth, and shouted the first words that came. "Who are you?" The knight did not answer. And yet, before Cayley retreated down the stairs, a single feather of silver frost settled on his palm. It looked like the filament of a snowflake, and it melted on contact. He did not know it was a summons. The summons unfolded 3 days later, when the moons fattened and the shutters of Dromben rattled beneath an unseasonal gale. Cayley had drawn night duty at the Guild of Cartographers, copying coastal hazards onto new parchment. He was alone except for racks of half-made globes and the sigh of parchment stretching under humidity. Around the 9th hour, a low growl rolled through the workshop, except it was no animal noise. It was the reverberation of sky across vaulted beams, a lupine call entire planets away. The lamps guttered. The stone around him loosened, took on the texture of ash. Cayley pivoted and found he was no longer in the guild. He stood upon a broad causeway of reflected starlight. The universe shone around him like a million silver bells. Ahead, a woman in armor the hue of first frost waited astride a gargantuan wolf. The beast's eyes were pale opals, tail plumed with nebular dust. The woman lifted her visor. She looked no older than Cayley, but her gaze was centuries deep. "I am Vessa of the Silver Drifts," she said, as courteously as if inviting him to tea. "We heard your voice 4 nights past. Those who see us and speak are rare, therefore we have come." Cayley's thoughts chased one another like spilled beads. Am I dreaming? Vassus Wolf trotted forward, sniffed his collar as though searching for fear. "Wishers rarely believe their eyes," she said. "Yet a dream cannot bruise." She reached and pinched lightly at his forearm. He flinched. Where her gauntlet touched, a ring of frost blossomed, vanished. "We ride the drift lanes, collecting wishes forsaken by those who made them. You have seen us. Such seeing marks you. Will you ride, Kelly?" "Ride where?" "Why me?" His pulse hammered, but beneath the fear simmered joy, the kind that once had lit his boyhood until a father's ills snuffed it out. "Because you noticed?" Vessa replied. "Most folk bury their wishes beneath chores and coin. Eyes that still look upward are precious. The driftland's thin, the forgetting spreads. We need new riders." A second wolf pounced across nothingness to halt beside Cayley. It kneaded the star path with paws the size of anvils, then knelt to bring its ridged spine level with his boots. Cayley inhaled. He thought of the ink stains on his cuffs, the sour tang of his father's room, and the cramped maps he drew that no ship's master trusted. He swung onto the creature's back. The fur felt like chilled velvet. Vessa nodded once and spurred her mount. As Kaylee's wolf leapt after her, Drombane vanished behind a curtain of racing light. Thus began Kaylee's apprenticeship to the Silver Nomads, riders of lunar wolves, custodians of hopes half abandoned. On the first night's journey, the pack coursed over the ecliptic like surf. Vessa narrated, millennia ago, when humanity first tilted its head toward the heavens, a handful of wishes rose so potent they cracked the shell that encased the world. Lunar wolves, born in that fissure between yearning and void, sniffed out each wish, guiding it to fruit or failure. But with centuries, mortals layered their lives with iron laws, towers, and tariffs. Wishes still flew, yet most were recanted before dawn. I didn't mean it. It was foolish. It can't be done. Those words sickened the wolves. So a conclave of skyfaring peoples, ancestors of Vessa's kin, swore to shelter the beasts and gather the abandoned wishes, storing them in the vault of echoing ice until each could be rekindled or returned. Kaylee listened, heart hammered into dwarfish sighs by the immensity of the task. And if wishes are never reclaimed? Then they freeze into ghost comets, Vessa said. Their shards pierce living worlds, sowing grey despair. We salvage what we can. That night they netted 8 wishes, a fisher's promise to learn his daughter's lullaby, an aging queen's desire to taste pomegranates without fear of poison, a beggar's prayer for shoes that didn't blister. Each shimmered like a moth in the nomad's crystal cages. Kaylee, perched behind the flank of his wolf, felt the warmth of those small longings and realized that none were trivial. By dawn, they'd stabled the wolves on a plateau carved into the dark side of the Nero moon. Silver barns, sculpted from meteor glass, rang softly in the vacuum, holding the howls inside like song within a drum. Days became not days, but segments of orbit. Kaylee learned to braid nets of lunar silk, to read the seismographs that charted where a wish might fracture beneath regret. He learned a mount's mood by the pitch of its breathing, and how to soothe a wolf faltering in the cold wake of Saturn. His teacher, a stoic elder named Nemek, told him the first rule. We do not interfere. We collect only what is given up. Our purpose is stewardship, not robbery of will. Yet as seasons on Earth wheeled onward, Kaylee could not forget one wish he himself had made long ago. Make father whole. He remembered whispering it through splintered teeth as his father slammed fists against windows that were not to blame. Had that wish risen? Had it been surrendered? He feared to ask. He grew from newcomer to adept. His wolf, whom he named Frist, recognized his footsteps among dozens. After every foray, they roosted on ice-crusted parapets, watching galaxies swirl like milk in ink. Frist would rest his jaw on Kaylee's knee, and Kaylee would recite stories of cartographers who once believed the sea ended in cascades. The wolf's ears pricked as though amused. Months into his service, Kaylee accompanied Vessa on a mission to the Meridian Rift, a ragged gash in space-time where forgotten wishes converged in lethal tides. The drift paths there were treacherous. One slip meant centuries lost in temporal foam. As they approached, they spotted a convocation of taloned shapes, eclipse hawks, scavengers that gorged on expired hope, their feathers rimmed with void. In their beaks glimmered threads of discarded dreams, already dulling to soot. Vessa unslung her spear. They were rare once, she hissed. Now their flocks multiply. The age of forgetting deepens. The wolves bared fangs. Frist lunged first, carrying Kaylee into the whirl. Starlight scratched itself raw against hawk wings. Kaylee cast nets while clinging to Frist's ruff. Each caught thread twanged with a person's ache. One hawk veered for Kaylee's face, eyes swirling like black suns. Frist twisted, took the blow across his shoulder and tumbled. Wolf and rider plummeted toward the rift. Wind became knives. Kaylee's netting arm went numb. He recalled Nemek's rule, don't interfere. but felt a fiercer command thunder up through the wolf beneath him. Survive. He leaned forward, whispered, "Climb," and Frist snarled, thrusters of light flaring from his hind legs. They vaulted back to safety as Vessa's spear skewered the last hawk, which disintegrated into smokeless ember. On the plateau afterward, Vessa pressed salve of comet ice into Frist's wound. She studied Kaylee. "You spoke to him. Not orders. Companionship? Most riders require years to gain that rapport." Kaylee shrugged. "Maps teach one to read terrain. A soul is a kind of terrain." Vessa smiled, then her smile waned. "We may need bonds like yours soon. The hawk's rise means greater peril. Something is devouring wishes at their root." The answer arrived in clues. Nets returned emptier, and the threads within wilted quicker. On Earth, Callie observed, towers climbed higher while streets sank deeper into mud. People did not look up. They stared at glass squares glowing in their hands, mouths shaped like small, confused zeros. One drizzling evening, when the wolves padded above a metropolis whose very clouds tasted of exhaustion, Callie lowered his net reflexively toward a rooftop where a boy sat alone hugging a busted violin. The boy's lips moved. The wish surged radiant and extinguished before Fries could lunge, snuffed by its own maker. Stay. "Why quit so swiftly?" Kaylee asked the wind. "Because he already believes it impossible," Nimic answered. "Despair kills its children faster than time." Kaylee's sleep that cycle was troubled. He dreamt of his father, gaunt, coughing on a key. He awoke within the moon stables to realize the memory was not wholly dream. His father still lived somewhere in Drumbine, likely unhealed, perhaps worse. Had Kaylee's wish been harvested, or did it linger unresolved, a knife twisting in the vault? That question haunted the apprentice until he broke rank and descended secretly to earth. He timed it for dawn, when the nomad sentries dozed and the wolves slumbered under shifting blue halos. Frist awakened nonetheless, followed. Kaylee tried ordering him back. The wolf's stare said, "I follow the rider, not the rule." Together they sprinted across the cusp of gravity and slipped into Dromben's labyrinth. Kaylee found his father where rumor had placed him, the ale gutter behind the Iron Pearl Inn, collapsed atop rain-soaked burlap, face mottled as a drowned map. The smell of spoiled gin clung to him like algae. Kaylee's throat clogged. He had wanted to rescue this man since childhood. He knelt, shook the bony shoulder. The eyes that opened were bloodshot, yet clear enough to recognize. "Boy," rasped the elder, "I sold you to the guild. You come to mock? I came to change things," Kaylee answered, though the words felt thin. He thought of nets, of rules against interference. Still, this was his father, and the wish was his own. But in that instant the air tore. A vortex of violet flame unfurled above the alley. Eclipse hawks, but larger, merged into a serpentine mass. Within the whirlwind glowed a figure cloaked in annulled starlight. Its voice was iron-growled against bone. "A rider meddles," it crowed. "Thus the covenant fractures, and I may dine." Kaylee staggered back. Frist planted himself between boy and void, fur bristling. The figure extended a hand that looked like a negative of flesh. "I am Vorex, the forgetting made flesh. Every forsaken wish empowers me. Break the rules more, mortal. Give me your father's redemption. Let that be the sweetest vintage." The alley surrounding them sagged, colors draining. Kaylee felt his memories peel away like bark. He clutched at Farias's mane. The wolf howled, a call that ricocheted off clouds. Above, argent meteorites streaked. The silver nomads arrived, Avessa at their head. She scanned the scene. Kaylee off mission, Vorex manifest, and sorrow pinched her brow. "The boy broke the first rule," Vorex hissed. "Cannot punish him without punishing yourselves. Give me the wolves, give me the vault, and you may keep your fragile order. Vesa brandished her spear. We do not yield to oblivion. Yet her gaze at Kaylee was weighted with equal parts reproach and fear. Kaylee realized this battle was his making, and perhaps his to end. He faced Vorax. You thrive on wishes discarded, because we believe them impossible. Around him the alley warped into faceted ice. He shouted to his father, Did you ever wish to be healed? The man coughed, pain tearing across his face like dawn in a cracked mirror. Aye, he whispered, but I'm beyond hope. Burn the memory. Vorax laughed, a sound that shook shutters for streets. Kaylee took his father's hand. Not beyond hope. I reclaim my wish. Within Kaylee's chest, something snapped open like a vault door. A warmth flooded his limbs. Childhood yearning resumed after long siege. From his heart flew a filament of silver, brighter than any net he had cast. It wrapped around his father and around his own wrist, forging a braid of possibility. Vorax shrieked. The alley brightened, time resumed pace, nomads hurled nets of starlight at the manifestation. Vorax dissolved into whistling vapor, deprived of the feast he'd anticipated. Sarah's father sagged, unconscious yet breathing evenly, freed, if only a little, from the hooks of despair. Vesa dismounted, visor raised. Her eyes brimmed with unshed frost. You redeemed rather than stole. The covenant evolves. She knelt, placed a gauntlet on Kaylee's shoulder. We have long mistaken stewardship for detachment, but a wish reclaimed at its root starves oblivion far better than any collection. Perhaps the first rule must change. Above, the wolves circled in luminous gyres, their howls laced not only with hunger, but with a new timbre, a note of dawning courage. Months unspooled. Kaylee's father entered a sanatorium funded quietly by the guild. Sobriety grew one stair-step at a time. Kaylee split his life between Earth and drift-mapping coastlines by day, patrolling heavens by night. Sometimes his father peered through the observatory glass and glimpsed a flicker of lupine light, and whether he believed what he saw, Kaylee never asked. Within the nomad's citadel, Vorax's setback proved temporary. Reports of forgetting still flooded in, but the riders adapted. Nets alone no longer sufficed. They began coaxing wishes to remember before surrender. They whispered inspiration through dreams, guided travelers' eyes upward in moments of doubt. Some mortals heard them and rekindled their own flames. Each rescued wish struck Vorax like debris to a collapsing star. Opposition grew fierce. Eclipse hawks massed around every new hope like flies over fruit. Yet with each confrontation, Kaylee felt Frist's muscles sail easier under him. Wolves fed on belief. The revived wishes nourished them better than any salvage. During one perilous sortie beyond the asteroid belt, where a colony of miners had resigned themselves to die when oxygen forecasts failed, Kaylee led a squad of young riders. They did not harvest the miners' despair. They unfurled illusions of vast green fields across the void's edge, reminding the miners of grain they planned once to cultivate. The miners' will rekindled. They rerouted power, survived until rescue. In the aftermath, new lunar pups were born in the moon stables, each bearing a stripe of emerald along their spines, proof that hope, once ignited, breeds new wonders. Word of the silver nomads trickled into mortal folklore. Songs in taverns spoke of shining riders, dropping feathers of frost that melted into courage. Children left handwritten wishes on rooftops, not to discard them, but to invite the nomads to keep watch. Some nights, Kaylee collected such letters and tucked them beneath Frisk's collar for warmth rather than storage. The saga wove onward. There were battles lost. A city that replaced its river with a canal of screens, its inhabitants forgetting the taste of rain. A poet who closed her heart forever after censors burned her scrolls. But for every extinguished flame, two more guttered back to life as the nomads intervened. Years later, Kali stood on the vault's edge beside Vesa, now High Warden, surveying chambers once glacial with dormant wishes. Many cages lay open, emptied not by surrender, but by return to their owners. The air rang not with echoes, but with living song. Oblivion will keep testing us, Vesa said, but we discovered something simple. Humans forget, yes, yet they can remember, especially if guided by fellow human. Kali nodded. Earth gleamed beneath them, patches of war, patches of festival, all whirling through seasons. He thought of maps incomplete, of coastlines always redrawn. He remembered his father's trembling but sober hands painting boats in still water. Frist whuffed and leaned against his legs. Kali spoke, as much to the planet as to his friend. A wish is a direction, not a destination, a map, not the terrain. So long as someone is willing to read it, the path remains. Above them, silver nomads assembled, spears catching dawn. Lunar wolves stamped restless patterns, anxious to run. Kali mounted Frist. Together they bounded into the widening sky, nets stowed but hearts unbound, ready not merely to collect forgotten wishes, but to remind any soul staring at the dark that the first step toward light is to look up and keep looking until the silver riders come into view.